welcome back to the We've All Been There podcast. We're so glad that you're back with us. If you have been listening with us, we're so grateful that you've been on this journey with us. And if it's your first time, make sure and go back and check out all the episodes we've released. And I guess now that we've done 3 episodes, we're kind of like pros.
Yeah, man. We got this stuff
figured out.
down. Yeah. No, we don't. Yeah, well, I'm excited that everybody's here, and it's been great the first couple of episodes, having a good time together, learning some stuff, getting better. I was a lot more proud of the second episode than the first one, and so, but I think both of them had good things that hopefully will help people, and that's kind of our goal in the podcast. It's why we call it the We've All Been There podcast, is because hey, we all have struggles and we all have stuff that we go through, and we hope that it'll be stuff that you can relate to and that you'll go, hey, yeah, I feel that, and it'll be helpful as well. And here's what I know, because I'm a preacher, and I know lots of preachers. As preachers and communicators, a lot of times, we got 30 minutes to share on a topic or whatever, and so we can tend to kind of be really binary and, hey, we do this all the time or we never do that. And here's what I know. There's not anything that is really, always or never. There's always kind of those in-betweens that are in there. And so that's what we want to do in this podcast, is kind of lean into the in-betweens and go, let's talk about some of the stuff that, because it's easy to go, I always read my Bible every day, or I never, say anything bad about anybody or whatever. Yeah. And we know that that's, there's some in-betweens in there, and it's not really always or never. And so that's kind of what the podcast is all about, and just go, hey, let's relate on some of those topics that are kind of those in-betweens, which actually leads us to our topic today. And today's topic, it started out kind of as a joke on last month's podcast. So tell them what happened, Max.
Yeah, so you were talking about 100% truth and 100% detail. And basically, we're just talking about people oversharing. And that is something that I think is just weird.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of how it started as a joke. We joked about maybe we should do a podcast on We've All Been Weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we laughed really loud into the microphones. I noticed that, and
then something clicked. We're like,
yeah. Then it was like, hey, wait a minute. Like, that is a good topic, because if we're going to be, a podcast that's about being vulnerable, being relatable, opening up and sharing, we also want to make sure we're not the kind of people that are like, start getting kind of weird.
Yep.
And we've all been there too. We've all known that person that maybe overshared, or that person that gave a little too much information, a little TMI,
Yikes.
and it makes everybody feel kind of uncomfortable, and it's a little cringy, and it's a little weird. And let's just be real. We've all seen that, but we've also all done that probably too.
Guilty.
And so let's talk about, we've all been weird. And I'm not just talking about necessarily, we'll get into later, like when it comes to vulnerability and relationships and things like that. But, we've all been weird, not just like overshared, but we do weird stuff because, that's just the nature of life. And so sometimes something that I think is weird, somebody else doesn't think weird, and something that I think is, it's normal, somebody else might think that's kind of weird. And so I thought we'd just talk about, Max, do you do anything? It might be, like a habit or a hobby or whatever. Like, what are some things that you do that others might consider to be weird?
Well, growing up, we had during lunch we had like circle pizzas.
Okay.
Did you ever have circle pizzas? Well, what am I saying? We all have circle pizzas.
Yeah. Well, all pizzas are circle. Well, mostly,
mostly,
they do have some square ones.
So it was like individual size.
Okay.
Like
they
would serve us they wouldn't serve us slices. They would serve us like a whole
personal pan, like a personal pan pizza.
Man, that was a weird moment right there. But I would eat my food in a circle. And I think I learned that because I was eating like these personal pizzas. And so like if you see me today, if I'm eating a burger, I'll eat it in a circle.
Wow.
Yeah, if I eat a pizza, even if it's a slice, I'll eat it in a circle.
Eat it in a circle.
Eat around it.
Okay.
And so like any food that I have, usually I'll like eat the crust, I'll eat the outside of it, and then work my way inside. And people are always like, why do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't just eat it like, forward to back.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I do that's
weird. That's weird.
That's weird. Well,
okay.
Ouch. Another thing that I think is weird is I like to wear my shoes around the house. So when I come home, I like just leave my shoes on.
Okay. And I do that too, actually.
And it isn't till Amy comes and like tells me, why do you have your shoes on? Because not a happy wife thing, right?
Yeah.
She does not like when
She don't want your shoes on in the house.
Exactly,
Gotcha. Okay.
exactly. So I'm really bad about that. I'm working on it. So I've learned to like take my shoes off now more often before she shows up at least.
Okay.
But yeah, that's definitely something that, it's kind of weird that I do.
Yeah, well, I'm weird in that way too, actually. Like if I'm doing, we have tile floor at our house. It's that kind of that wood look or whatever.
Yeah.
It hurts my feet if I'm doing the dishes or whatever. So I'll go, like I'm doing the dishes, I'll go put my shoes on. So that's kind of weird.
That's funny.
I was thinking other stuff that I do that's kind of weird. I like caffeine in the morning, like most people need a little caffeine, but I don't like coffee. I like the way it smells, but I don't like the way it tastes. Tried to like it when I was in college because that was the cool thing, and I was like, if you have to work this hard to like something, then But anyway, so I drink Diet Coke, which I know is terrible for me, but I do, and at least I won't get fat because I'm drinking the Diet Coke. But anyhow, I drink Diet Coke in the morning, or I've recently started drinking Diet Mountain Dew in the morning. So it was a week or two ago, I was on another podcast, and shout out to my friend who has the Mission Driven Budget podcast.
Come on.
So we had a great time doing that one. But as we were starting the podcast, we were testing the mics and stuff, and so it was just something for us to talk about while we were testing the mics. He said, "What'd you have for breakfast?" And I said, "I had Mountain Dew for breakfast." And he just looked at me, and he didn't say that's weird, but he did say, "I've never met anyone who drinks Diet Mountain Dew for breakfast." So I know he was thinking that it was weird.
You could have stopped at you don't drink coffee.
And then that's weird.
And that would have been weird.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And the fact that you're drinking Mountain Dew or have drank Mountain Dew, that's like Amy would kill me if she found out. She doesn't even let me drink Mountain Dew like in general, really.
Yeah.
Because she's like, that's just pure acid. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
If I drank that in the morning, she would just.
Oh yeah.
She'd let me have it. So.
Well, look, we need to go back to that first episode about we've all wanted to quit. I should maybe need to quit some Diet Mountain Dew. So, and you have any other weird quirks or hobbies or anything like that?
No, that's pretty much like
You're
it.
a normal guy,
Yeah,
man.
that's the only stuff that I'm willing to share.
There you go.
I don't want to be weird.
There you go.
I don't want to be too weird.
We don't want to overshare.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was thinking one more thing for me is that I recently got back into an old thing that I did when I was just a little kid, and that was riding BMX bikes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. I know it's weird for a 46-year-old, almost 47-year-old man to be riding BMX bikes, but I'm having fun doing it. But it's funny because I went to the skate park a few months ago, and while I was riding around on the skate park, there was this girl that was there, and she was talking to her friend on FaceTime, and then all of a sudden I heard her. She goes, "Oh my goodness!" And she turned the phone around. She goes, "Look at this old guy riding this bike here at the skate park." So yeah, that's kind of weird. And then I was riding around in our neighborhood, and there was this guy. He was walking his dog, and he's walking up, and he's kind of looking at me like, and as he got a little closer, he goes, "Oh man, I was looking from over there." And as I got closer, I realized, man, that's not no spring chicken over there riding that bike. And so I was like, man. Yeah, I know it's kind of weird, but whatever, right? Yeah. What you do, you.
That's like less
right?
weird and more just hurtful.
Yeah, well, that's all right. That's all right. We had fun. I'm having fun doing it. Yeah. I mean, we've all been weird. Yeah. What about, you were saying something about hot takes on what is weird and what's not weird.
Yeah, so let's just give our hot takes on our personal opinion of what we think is weird.
Okay.
Like what is something we think is weird? I'll start. I'll go. I think it's weird when people wear Crocs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And especially when you wear them to church. So if you're out there wearing Crocs to church.
What about when you have Crocs and then you get those little, what are those things that they decorate the Crocs with?
I want to say they're giblets, but that's
not. Is that what they call them? I don't know. I'm thinking like charms, like a charm bracelet or something.
Leave a comment, send us something, let us know. Please educate us.
Yeah.
We want to know. But yeah, those, I'm like, what are we doing?
Those, yeah.
Either get like some Birkenstocks, wear some like sandals, or
just
put some shoes on.
Well, if you're from Burleson, you can wear the Hey Dudes because those are like really popular here. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those.
They look comfortable. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I kind of think the whole mullets and mustaches that some of these Gen Zers are wearing, I'm like, that's kind of not it, for me. But I don't know. What about in relationships or just, when we're talking about being vulnerable, we're talking about, sharing our heart and being relatable. Have you ever had a time when you feel like you were kind of overshared or ended up kind of being a little weird?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like in high school and in college, this happened a lot. The amount of times I've overshared and been vulnerable with a girl that I thought I liked or thought liked me, in an attempt to impress her, maybe an attempt to be like vulnerable and sensitive and all the things. That's a big yikes.
Yeah.
So if you're out there, I just want you to know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I made it awkward. I'm sorry that I was weird and I overshared in an attempt to be like the cool guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, I know I've done that many times too. Maybe not to impress a girl, but really for me, I've always been someone who kind of leans into trying to be a little bit more authentic and honest, but sometimes you lean over the line a little bit and you don't realize till later, like maybe that felt good for me, but that was cringy for everybody else or uncomfortable for everybody else. I know over the last couple of years coming out of the pandemic was a difficult time for pastors, for all pastors, and there were a lot of people that stopped coming to church and just a lot of things that we went through. And it was a struggle for me with grief and kind of the loss of people that didn't come back to church and just all that kind of stuff. And I look back now and I go, there were probably a few times when I probably overshared just a little bit, and it was a kind of me externally processing things that I was going through. And I think it was probably still good to talk to people about it and to let people know that it was something that was difficult. But there were probably times when I said maybe not too much, but maybe said too often, what the struggle was like. And so I think we've kind of all been in that place before where we've done that or where we've experienced that, where we've been around people. So that was kind of the thought is let's talk about that. How can we be relatable and authentic, and how can we be that kind of, we want to connect with people, but not go too far, not overshare, not be weird. And then there's another side of that also. The flip side is like when somebody opens up to us, and we hope that they do. We hope that we have those types of opportunities for people to be honest and vulnerable with us. How do we respond? So how can you be authentic without being weird, but also how can you respond when someone kind of bears their soul to you? And so I just kind of, the way we do on this podcast is I usually have a list of 3 or 4 things. So I kind of put 3 or 4 things about how to be authentic without being weird. We can talk about that just a little bit. The first thing that I thought is you got to think about, am I sharing in the right amount? Yeah. And that's so important because we've said this before, like Craig Rochelle says, people admire your strengths, but they relate to your weaknesses. Yep. And so that's the whole point of the podcast is for us to relate to one another. And it's in our weaknesses that we really relate. Yep. From afar, someone can say, I love what they're doing. But when you really show yourself and show your struggles and your weaknesses, that's what draws people in. But on the flip side of that is like, people are drawn to authenticity, but they're repelled from, from people who are too vulnerable and overshare and people that get kind of weird. And so there's a balance there, and you have to think like, is this the right amount that I'm sharing? And so there's this, this principle that I've learned that I've taught a few times before, and it didn't come from me. I give credit to my counselor who taught me this, but it's so important that there's a difference between truth and detail. Yeah. And that hopefully you always are sharing 100% truth. That's our goal as Christians is everything that we say, we want to speak truth. But at the same time, we don't always have to share 100% detail. You know what I'm saying? And so, like I just mentioned, I share openly that I meet with a counselor, twice a month, and that's huge. It helps me. And with my counselor, like I give him 100% truth, and I give him 100% detail as well. And I let you guys know, everybody that's watching and listening, that hey, I go to the counselor, and first of all, I don't want that to be weird. That should be something that's not weird. Good. That should be something that's normal. And I'll share that I go to counselor, but I don't tell everybody everything I say when I'm talking to the counselor. So there's truth that I see a counselor, but then there's a level of detail that's like, I might say, hey, I share with my counselor that I struggled with grief, after the pandemic. but I don't, give names of people that hurt my feelings or those type of things, because there's a difference between truth and detail. And so I might be always sharing 100% truth, but I might go, hey, in this situation, I give 10% detail or 20% detail or 5% detail or whatever. And that's, to me, that really is helpful in making sure that we don't overshare.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to counseling too for myself. And then I remember whenever Amy and I were getting married, we did, premarital counseling, and then we did some counseling afterwards. And the stuff that we talk about there, like, I don't share that with a lot of people. But I do share that we did do counseling because, like, you're getting married. You're like, two lives are becoming one, and that's like a big deal. Like, that's a big change in someone's life. And so, like, you need to have someone you can bear your burdens with. Like, counselors are professional burden bearers that know what they're talking about, right?
Yep.
And, like, as much as, going to your friends or going to people that, you respect, like, that is their sole job, is to help your mind be able to, like, process these thoughts and these feelings. And so, yeah, I mean, I will share to my friends, like, hey, I have some friends that are getting married, or just recently got married, and I will recommend, like, hey, you need to do premarital counseling. Like, we did that, and it helped us a lot. And I might share, hey, like, these are some things we talked about, but again, I'm not gonna be like, and this is what we said, or this is what she said to us, or this is what we said to each other.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to save that for the counselor and us.
Yes.
And for us to talk about.
Because that's a different level of detail. And so you might even say, hey, we're going through a struggle right now. Yeah. But you don't have to give every detail of what that struggle is, for sure.
And the other thing about it is, are you being weird for someone else? Like,
because it may be I feel comfortable to share that, but what
Amy
is that making the other person feel?
Whether that's a friend, whether that's your wife, whatever, whether that's your team, It's like, you don't want to share for them. It's not your news to share sometimes.
It's not. Yeah, it definitely isn't. So that's so important. Am I sharing the right amount? But then that kind of leads to that next one. Am I sharing with the right people?
Yeah.
And that's so important, because here's what I believe is that not everybody needs to know everything, but somebody does.
Yep.
You need to have somebody in your life that pretty much knows everything that you're going through. So I'm not going to go around sharing it with everybody, but I'm going to have some people in my life that I do share things with: a spouse, a friend, a counselor, a pastor, whatever. And a great rule of thumb here is if it's a current struggle, something that I'm currently going through, then I'm going to share it up. So, I'm going to share with someone who is above me. Maybe it's a pastor, maybe it's a leader, maybe it's someone in that way. Especially, like, in this sense, I'm talking to people who are in ministry. But I'm not going to share out everything that I'm going on, like, currently in my life, all the level of detail. But I might be able to share more detail with someone that I'm sharing up with. So, you as the youth pastor, you could come and talk to me,
Right.
Or for me, I have a counselor, I have other pastors that I could go and talk to. And if it's something that's current right now that I'm going through, then I'm going to share that up and not out. Yeah. Because here's the thing is, if I got up on Sunday morning and shared in a high level of detail everything that I'm going through in a current struggle right now, I might be more relatable, but I'm going to be less respectable.
There it is.
And there's this level of leading that you do have to relate to people, but you also have to have a level of respect. It's like two wings on a plane, that keep the plane up in the air. If you tip one side too much, I become too relatable, I stop becoming respectable. But if I try to just have everybody respect me all the time, then I'm not relatable. You got to have both of those things going on. And so you have to think about, am I sharing the right amount? Am I sharing with the right people? And then there's a third thought is, am I sharing at the right time?
Yeah.
After I've overcome and have victory in an area of my life, it might be good that that's a share out type of a thing, because there are gonna be people that could be encouraged by it. And so we know that's a biblical truth, is that that we go through the struggles that we go through, and God helps us and He comforts us and He gets us through those, gives us victory in those, so that we can then in turn use those struggles to encourage others and to help others who might be going through the same sort of things. And so if it's when it's the right time, when it's, hey, I've already overcome this, or I've gotten, a long way towards victory in this, then I can begin to share how God has helped and share the victory, and that's really a help and an encouragement for others. Another couple thoughts that I added to this was that, if you're going to share at the right time, you also need to think about, are my emotions right? So maybe this is not something that level of detail for everybody, but I'm going to the right person, and I'm sharing a little bit more level of detail, like where's my emotions? Because here's the thing. When your emotions are high, your judgment is generally low.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm wound up about something, I probably better wait before I make the call, or before I have the meeting, or before I send the email or the text or whatever. So I think about that. Another one is, not just am I sharing the right time, but am I sharing the right amount of time? Because I think we've all been there. You're in that life group, or you're in that friend group, or you're in that whatever, and you're having that vulnerable moment, and it's wonderful, and it's good, and it's great. But then there's that person that ends up, talking and just dominating the conversation.
I gotta go to bed.
Yes, like, okay, I'm glad you got to share that, but hey, let's put a timer on this thing or something. You know,
right.
So
I put something down on here. I was like, also, don't be weird and call me about something that could wait until the morning.
Yes,
and like respectfully, right? Like there are things.
Yes,
there are emergencies. Like you, as pastors, people have access to us kind of whenever.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, like we also have families. Like we also have bedtimes. We also have like schedules.
Yep.
And so like, if you do call me, like under that time, you know what I mean? Like if it's a big deal, absolutely call me whenever. It's an emergency, call me. But if it's just like, what should I eat tonight? It's like, you figure that out on your own. Like, I thank you that you want to talk to me, but like, let's not make this weird, And so you're so right. It's like, it's the right amount. So figuring out like how much to share, and then when to share that thing.
And the right people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we have multiple inboxes. Yeah. And used to, it was like if somebody didn't have your number, they couldn't get you, but they can get you all kinds of different inboxes that people can share things with you through. And so I think that is good. And I think if you're the one sharing and you're the one in need, recognizing that the person responding is going to respond when they can, and
which I think you've talked to me about this, and I've heard this before, but like if it's like an emergency, call me.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like important, text me. If it can be like answered in a day, like Slack me, email me, whatever. Yeah. And like for me, I'm like, if you don't want me to get to you like in a month, send me a letter.
Yeah.
Like, cause I don't check my mail ever.
That is for sure. I used to love checking the mail, and now it's nothing but bills. So I don't. Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. So anyway, we've all been there. We've all done weird stuff. So how do we make sure we're not weird? We're sharing the right amount. We're sharing with the right people. We're sharing at the right times. The last one I had here is, am I sharing for the right reasons? And I think this is an important one, because I think before I start opening up and sharing something that might be vulnerable, something that I might be struggling with, I have to be thinking like, why?
Yeah.
Why am I sharing this? Because we've all seen that, probably done it too, where maybe I'm sharing because I really just need to gain some sympathy. Maybe I'm sharing because I'm trying to get attention. We've probably experienced this times before, where people are sharing some financial need or something, and their real thing is they're hoping that you're going to give them some money or something.
Yeah.
And what's the true motive of why I'm being open with these people? And the thing is that vulnerability is not about trying to get somebody to feel sorry for me, or to gain attention, or to get somebody to give something to me. It's really about connection. It's about connecting with others. It's about being there, rejoicing with those who rejoice, and mourning with those who mourn. This is what Paul was talking about in 1 Thessalonians 2. He says, because we loved you, we were happy to share not only God's good news with you, but even our lives, that you had become so dear to us. And that's, that's what I want in my relationships, is I want to be in a place where the right people, I can be free and open to share my life with them. And that only comes when my motives are right, when I'm sharing with the right motives, and people can see through that. And sometimes that's when it becomes weird, I think, is when you can see through, and this person, the reason they're sharing this is because they're trying to get some sympathy, or they're trying to manipulate a situation, or they're those type of things. And I don't think that's what the body of Christ is meant to be. I think it's meant to be, like Paul was saying, like, we want to share not just the good news, we want to share our lives with you because you become so dear to us. And so making sure that we're reciprocating as well. Like, we're not the one taking up all of the conversation, and we're going, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm also not just getting something from this relationship, but I'm also I'm adding value to others. So
yeah, so I mean, the Bible also says it like this. It says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. Psalm 139:23. And it's just that piece of, I got to check myself. I got to know what my motives are. And I mean, that's basically what we're talking about. So let me ask you this. Do you think there is a correct order? Like, you've mentioned these 4 different reasons, these 4 different things of how do we check ourselves to not be weird?
Yeah.
Which one would you say would go first, or do you think there is an order?
I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I hadn't really even thought about that until we talked about it for this podcast. I think that it might be possible that the last one ought to be first. Am I making sure that my motives are right before I do anything? I mean, that's where the Bible says that everything flows from the heart, that it all starts with what's going on down in here. So is my heart right? If my heart's right, then I can begin to go, okay, what's the right amount? And is this the right setting?
Yeah.
Are these the right people?
Yep.
And it probably needs to start really from there. And I think that's a good observation.
Yeah.
Is my heart right? What's the motive? What's the reason behind what I'm saying?
Yeah, I put on each one of these. If you have everything but the right reasons, it's selfish and manipulative. Mm-hmm. If you have everything but the right time, it's an inconvenience. If you have everything but the right people, it's a missed opportunity. If you have everything but the right amount, it's just awkward.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think if you want to have effective, healthy, good, not weird, vulnerable conversations that allow you to connect with people and not just communicate with people, you got to have all 4.
Definitely.
And that's tough.
It is.
And you kind of have to do some work before you open your mouth to know, like, am I about to build and grow closer to someone, or am I about to create some distance from people?
I agree. And I think that all of those other things are going to flow better if your motives are right.
Yep.
If your heart is right, you're going to be more likely to share in the right amount at the right time.
Yep.
With the right people. Now, I was just thinking of this, though. Let's look at the other side before we go into like how to respond when someone is vulnerable. What about there are people sometimes who might just go, that ain't worth it. I'm just not going to share anything. And I know, to me, and it might just be my leaning towards being someone who wants to be a little bit more relatable and vulnerable with people. But I know sometimes I'm also a little bit repelled when there are people that I can't seem to get them to open up to me, And let's talk about this. We're not saying that it's weird to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
We're just saying it's weird to be too vulnerable or over the top, oversharing. And so there might be some that are listening today or watching today that are going, I'm just going to hold everything to myself. Yeah. And I think that you're missing out there as well. If you're not being willing to, what you're missing out is connection and relationship and ability to connect with someone else and them connect with you, and to hold one another up, and to grieve with those who grieve, and mourn with those who mourn, but also rejoice with those who rejoice. We're missing out on those opportunities for being a part of something that matters, relationships and connection. And really, even I know we have leaders that are watching and listening. You're missing out on opportunity to influence people as people. You're missing out on opportunity for people to trust you.
Yeah.
I think that a huge part of being able to lead somebody somewhere is that they have to trust you first. And people can't trust you if they don't know you.
That's good.
And so I think there's the flip side of this is for some, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm doing way too much. I'm saying way too much, and I need to check my heart, and I need to make sure that the amount and the people and the place and all those things are right. But then there might be others that might be listening that, hey, just need to know it's okay. There's permission. You don't have to have it all together all the time. And people don't expect you to have it all together all the time. And if they are people who do expect you to have it together all the time, they're probably not your people.
Yeah, there it is.
And you need to find people that will love you the way that you are.
That's good. Yeah, and I think as we're doing this first part, we need to understand, like, what weird is not, you know? Like, weird is not necessarily like being awkward. Like, we have moments where things are awkward, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being weird is not being unique, right? Being weird isn't being authentic. You know, like, we have to be able to discern and understand, like, what is weird, right? Like, what is uncomfortable or something that is inappropriate, and we have to know what is someone just being, like, vulnerable and maybe a little awkward, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, nobody is perfect. And so, yeah, you're right. Let's give people grace and permission to be like, it doesn't have to be perfectly worded. If your heart, start there. If your heart is in the place of, like, I just want to connect with people, I want to love people, and I want to have these good, healthy relationships.
Yeah, and let's give ourselves permission to give ourselves permission to not have to be perfect. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think once we give that permission to ourselves, then it's so much easier to flow that permission to others as well. So you okay to start talking about the second part? Let's talk about what about if somebody else is vulnerable with you and they start to open up? How do you make sure that you are being supportive, empathetic, loving towards them? Because I think there's a skill in that as well. Just like there's a skill in knowing what's the right amount to share and the right time and all that, there's a skill in knowing how to help someone feel loved and comforted and supported when they're in a moment where they're sharing their heart or they're bearing their soul. And so I put down a couple of things. One, I think this is probably where I'd spend the most time, because this is probably the most important one, is close your mouth. You know, I think the tendency and the temptation when somebody's sharing with us is for us to try to fix their problem right off the bat. And that's just not helpful. You know, James says it with James 1:19, be quick to listen and slow to speak.
Yeah.
So maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's another friend in ministry or whatever that's needing to share something that's going on in their life. And I'm just telling you from experience, they're not asking you to fix it. They just want somebody to listen. They don't need advice. When I'm needing to somebody to just talk to, I'm a verbal, kind of processor. So I just need somebody listening so that I can process it out loud. I don't want you to fix it. I want you to tell me about your problem that you've got. You know, it's like what I need is just listen and just care. You know, just kind of lean in. And I've had that before where, I say, hey man, I'm really going through this, and then, well, let me tell you how to fix it. You know. Or another one is, we're going through the situation and, oh, really? Well, you think that's bad? Let me tell you about this situation that I'm going through. And to me, I'm just like, that didn't help. What I need is somebody to, in counseling speak. See, I go to counseling, so I think I know all this counseling stuff. Actually, I don't, but I do know this term. Yeah. And the term is called validating. Yeah. It's just, your feelings are valid. I may even have the answers to how to, I probably could give you 3 things that would be, and they would all start with the same letter for how to fix your problem. But that's not what somebody is needing. What they're needing is just to know that it's a valid feeling. And even if I don't feel that way or wouldn't feel that way, that's how they feel. Yeah. So that feeling is valid. So what do you say? What do you say when somebody's sharing their heart? I just wrote down a couple things, because instead of like, well, here's how you need to fix it or whatever, here's things that help, I think. Yeah. Just things like this. I'm sorry. Yeah. Wow. That must be hard. I'm with you. Yeah. I love you. you know what? This is a safe place. Thank you for sharing. I know that must be heavy. Mm-hmm. None of that was like, oh, that's a dumb feeling for you to feel that way. Or, man, why don't you just,
have faith.
Get over it? Or why don't you just have faith? Or why not? Or here's what you need to do to fix it. No, it was just, man, wow. Yeah. I'm sorry. That must be hard. Yeah. I'm thankful that you felt like I was a safe person to talk to about that. Thank you for sharing. Even sharing that might have been hard. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that then opens up for maybe you can help somebody later, but it's that old, the old leadership saying, I don't know who said it first, but I always give credit to John Maxwell. Anything that's leadership, that if you don't know who said it, just say John Maxwell. He probably is the one that said it. But it's that people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care.
That's right.
So I think that's important that you just close your mouth.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as pastors, or even as leaders, like we think we know all the answers sometimes. And it's partially because we spend some time with the Lord, and
we probably do know some answers.
We probably do know the answers, but it doesn't mean we have to communicate that. If we don't start with those pieces of, I'm sorry, that's heavy. Man, how can I help you? I'm feeling that with you. That hurt. That breaks my heart. If we're not able to have that piece, it doesn't matter what answer you have, because if they don't give you the permission to speak into their lives, that's just their chance to feel it with you.
Yeah.
And so in those moments, we have to learn to have empathy, right? It's not that sympathy piece of I see your struggle, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
It's can I crawl down there with
Let
you?
me enter into with you.
Can I get in that with you? Can I grieve with you? Can I just experience the loss and the hurt? And then that way it's what's more comforting than knowing that someone's there with you? You know what I mean? Oftentimes with the Lord, that's how we feel. We're I feel like you're far off, but he's no, I'm right here. And that's what brings comfort more than just it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That is not,
and
that
even
not
that, that might be a lie, because maybe it won't be okay.
That's so true.
And in a situation where you're going through something, you don't need somebody to tell you it's going to be okay if it might not. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to get better. Well,
how do you know that?
How do you know that?
Yeah.
Most of my experience has been that I've gone through things and it does get better, but there are people who go through things that it doesn't seem to get better, So I think it's something just practical. Pastor Joshua was talking about it a couple weeks ago when he was preaching, but I've used this in our marriage too. Sometimes if Amber's saying something to me, and I tend to be the one that processes more out loud than Amber does, but sometimes she'll need to process things out loud.
Yeah.
And if she's sharing something with me, just to say, well, do you want advice or do you just want to talk about it? Do you want me to encourage you or do you just need me to listen? What is that? And so the other day she said something like that and she I want encouragement. So I was like, okay, well, here's some encouragement,
Yeah.
But if she'd have said, no, I just wanted somebody to listen, then I said, okay,
Yeah.
So that's good. So I think you start just closing your mouth. I think that's the biggest one, especially as pastors and leaders that we struggle with, is we just want to jump into fix-it mode. Yeah. And fix-it mode might come later, but people aren't going to be open to hear that advice until they have felt your love. And so you close your mouth, but then that's the second thing is you open your heart.
Yep.
And you're not going to stay closed off to those people. It's like you just said, you're going to not just sympathize with them, but empathize. I'm going to get in there with them. My heart is open. This is what Paul was talking about in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 11. I like the way it reads in the Passion Translation. He says, my friends at Corinth, our hearts are wide open to you, and we speak freely, holding nothing back from you. He's talking about being vulnerable, right? Yeah. He says, and if there's a block in our relationship, it's not with us, for we carry you in our hearts with great love, yet you still withhold your affection from us. So I speak to you as children, make room in your hearts for us as we have done for you. Paul's feeling this feeling of, we were vulnerable with these people in Corinth, but they stayed closed off to us. And I think that's one of the frustrating things sometimes too, is when you do open your heart to someone and then they don't reciprocate. I've been there many times with pastors.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, as pastors, like a lot of times we just, I think that one reason is we don't want to be complainers, and we don't want to come across as, oh, this is because pastoring's a great job. I love being a pastor. What an incredible calling. But there are difficulties that come with being a pastor that only other pastors can know. And so I've been there in those times when you're talking to another pastor and you like just opened up and said, man, yeah, it's been a struggle, or we've been going through this or that. And then it's just like, they just stay like this brick wall in front of you. And it's like,
just me, I guess.
It's just me, I guess, And so I think this is what Paul is talking about. It's like, if someone opens their heart to you, open your heart back up to them.
Yep.
Make room in your heart for them. Don't put a block in that relationship, but be open to those around us so that we can care for them. We can help them. I think a good rule of thumb here too is just respond to people at the level of openness that they came to you with. So if they came to you with 10%, detail or whatever, then respond back with that same level of openness that they came to you if you can.
Yeah. So help me understand, as a young leader, how does that look like practically for a pastor with a leader? So like me as a youth pastor to my leaders, or even like a boss with an employee. Because I feel like what we're talking about is, and you kind of mentioned it when you're talking to other pastors, so it's like more of a peer to peer. So what does it look like, for example, when a leader comes to me and tells me they're struggling with, something a little more vulnerable, a little more sensitive, and they turn up the detail lever.
Yeah.
So they gave me a lot.
Yeah. So I think in that situation, it's more of a, hey, am I sharing up or sharing down? Yeah. I think you're going to respond to them. You're not probably going to be responding with, here's my problem. And we don't want to do that anyway. We already said that we don't want to be like, here, well, you have your problem. Now let me tell you my problem. I think what I meant there was more like on the level, maybe I misspoke when I said of detail, maybe more of compassion and caring. Gotcha. And if they come to you open-hearted, open-handed, then you're coming to them. My heart is open towards you too. And I'm not going to be telling you, hey, this is what I'm going through. I'm going to be helping you to process through whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So, yeah. So what are they again? We're going to close our mouth. We're going to open our heart, and then we're going to offer a hand.
That's right.
And I think that's where it's like there does come a point where I have been, I have validated someone's feelings.
Yep.
I have connected with them on a heart level, and now I can maybe, eventually have a time where, hey, maybe here are a couple things that might help. Here's some advice that I can give. Romans 12:13 says, when God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. So the thing is, like, after I've shown that support and after I've connected with someone, after I feel like they have been validated and feel like they have been loved and feel like after they feel like that, then that might be my opportunity to say, hey, how can I help? Or here's something that I think might be helpful for you. Here's a resource. Here's a thought. Here's a whatever. But the thing is that most people just skip to this point.
Yeah.
And if we skip to this one, people aren't ready to receive that yet. And so it's not
the same
until
thing with the order.
Yeah, it's an order thing. And I think this order probably has to be this order.
Yeah, that's good.
So offer a hand, help if you can. And then the last one is just plant your feet. And I think that's so important. I think what causes people to be afraid to ever be vulnerable is that maybe they were vulnerable before and people thought it was weird or freaked them out or people ghosted them and stopped being friends with them or whatever. And, if we want to help people when they're going through things, then we've got to be consistent. Trust takes time, and it takes consistency, and it takes faithfulness. And for us as leaders, for people to come to us, or for our friends, or for just people that are in our lives, they need to know that we're with them. We're with them no matter what.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can share with me that's going to cause me to stop loving you and stop being there for you. Now, the relationship may change because of certain things or whatever, but I'm going to continue to love you no matter what. And I think most of us as pastors and leaders, that's probably really our heart.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that doesn't come across to other people because we get busy and we got, dozens or even hundreds of people that come to us with things. And so to me, the thing that has been helpful is to develop some sort of system. Yeah. If somebody says, I'm going through something, Pastor, and a lot of times it'll be, Pastor, can you pray for us because we're going through this situation? Yeah. And of course, we're going to respond with, yes, we're praying for you. I'm so sorry you're going through that, and I'm here. Please let me know if you can do anything, and I'm going to pray for you. But what's really meaningful, I think, to people is if there can then later be a follow-up, a day or two or a week or a couple weeks later that I'm coming back and going, hey, how is that? You asked me to pray for you for your dad, or you asked me to pray for you for that thing going on at your work or whatever, and then being able to come back and go, hey, how'd that go? How you doing? I've been praying for you on that. That to me is what I'm talking about here, where my feet are planted. They know, hey, Pastor didn't just pray for me once. Yeah. He's there for me on a continual basis. Now, it's hard to do that if you got dozens of these opportunities to pray with people coming your way. So to me, I've just had to develop some sort of system, and it's just simple for me to put in my calendar. Like if somebody texts me or calls me and says, "Can you pray for a situation?" then I might put in my calendar a week from now. Yeah. Reach back out to so and so, and I've messed up way more times than I've gotten it right. And times when I've forgotten to call people back, and times when their feelings got hurt, and with good reason, not because that was my heart, but just because my systems failed or whatever. But I think having some sort of way of going, how can I make sure and follow up on that person even later, that really helps people feel cared for and loved.
And I'll brag on you for a little bit, because I remember on Tuesday we had our staff meeting, and we brought up a few different names in our staff meeting, people we need to reach out to and stuff. And I remember asking you about a certain family, and you had mentioned something that was going on, and you had written that down as a reminder to contact them. But then you had mentioned you had more than one person on there, and I was like, oh wow, like he doesn't just say he cares. Like you really do care. And so thank you, because like as pastors, it's so easy for us to say like, man, I love you and I'm here for you. And then like, we don't take the practical step to like actually check back in on them. And like, I think the second step, the step of following up, is more important than that first step. It's like they came to you and presented the need, presented the problem, or presented the opportunity. But then you took the time and the space in your head and your schedule to go, hey, I'm gonna check back in on you because that was important to me. And so thank you, because I know I'm bragging on him.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I also feel like there's more times that I've missed it than times that I've gotten it right. Yeah. And but I know my heart is to be that, and so the only way to make sure that my hands do what's in my heart is to have some sort of system. Absolutely. And so I just keep a daily to-do list on my calendar, and I'll try to, just put it out there a few days from now that I remember. And I'm sure there are people that might be listening and go, well, he didn't call me back. Well, If I didn't, I love you and I'm sorry. And it wasn't because I didn't love you. It's just because I failed, and we all do that sometimes.
Yeah, we've all been there. Well, I think that's it for today. You got anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, this has been great. I think the time just flew by today, and I love doing this every week. And so I'm so thankful for everybody that has watched and has listened, and would love for you to share it with your friends and anybody that you think it might be helpful to, and can't wait for next time.
Yeah. Well, check us out on Instagram at Been There Podcast. You can follow either of us as well on Instagram, Facebook, whatever you want to do. But that's it for today, and we'll see you next month.